Hello and welcome to Rocket Pod, a brand new podcast where we're going to be deconstructing visionary stories from across all different industries and professions, gaining real life insight into how they achieve their visions of success. My name is Harry Damon. I'm joined today by James and producer Peter. It's a new year 2021, and over the next 12 weeks we're going to be releasing each episode, giving you the chance to hear firsthand from all of our guests, including gold medal Olympians to the UK's #1 motivational business speaker, C-suite execs, YouTubers, world record holders and more. And I think without further ado, it's time for me to introduce our first guest for the series. We are joined by none other than gold medal Olympian Sally Gunnell, the only woman to hold the world, Olympic, European and Commonwealth gold medals at the same time. Let's get this episode going. Good morning, Sally. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Yes, I'm doing all right. Yeah, surviving the last few months and quite enjoyed it, which sometimes you don't want to admit you have, but it's been quite nice to spend time with the family and bits. So yeah, it's good.
That's nice. It sort of made you stop and actually given you that opportunity to spend some time with your family. So Sally, just to start us off, please could you share with our audience what your upbringing was like, and if you'd say it influenced your destiny to become an Olympic gold medalist?
Yeah, I think it did. I think I grew up on a farm in Essex, and I think having that sort of outdoor life, I was forever running up to the fields to see my dad and the tractor and just playing outside. So I think it did, and I think seeing my father, the work ethic that he put in and being a farmer was part of it as well. So yeah, I mean, you still got to have that sort of determination and talent at the same time. But I think being exposed to that much sort of activity from a youngster was really good, and having people around me that inspired me.
So your dad was quite a big influence on your life?
Yeah, very much so. Probably my mum as well. Yeah, I mean, they were, I think for him, he was always very busy on the farm, but I think you just learned that, to get success and get results, you've got to work hard. And it doesn't happen overnight. It was that sort of scenario. And yeah, I mean, I joined a club when I was 12 years old, which I loved, and I found a talent for running and something you were good at. And then it was just having, again, parents that run me to the training, which sometimes was sort of an hour, 2 hours away, rang me to sort of meetings, just being there and, giving up quite a lot of their own time to be able to come and help and support me in something that I love.
So you joined that club and you found that passion, you had your parents driving you back and forth to training. But at what point did you maybe realise that this could go further, that you really had a talent for this and actually you could take it outside the club and to the next level? Yeah,
probably not until I sort of finished school. And I think it was sort of about choices about what I was going to do. Most of my friends were going travelling or they were going to university and that sort of things. But I knew that, by that point I was being coached by one of the top coaches in the country. And I think also I was sort of, realised that I needed to train twice a day and that I needed to sort of up the amount of training that I was doing. So I sort of got a part-time job and trained twice a day, sort of most days, and made that commitment. And again, lucky to have the support of my parents to be able to financially support me as well in some ways as well. So yeah, I mean, that was a big move and a big change, but I always knew that I could go and I could step away from that if it didn't work. And I know I was just surrounded by a lot of people that would say, what a waste of time. You'll never make it scenario and, go and get a proper job and stuff. But I didn't listen to that. It was a passion. And, again, I had some great people that were telling me that, you had something special and, let's give it a go almost.
So I'd be interested to touch on balance. So you had this passion and drive for running, but also mentioned you had a part-time job, you had family, probably training, diet. So my question is, how did you balance this? And guess what drove you to continue towards this and to follow this passion for running?
I think it was just wanting to see how good I could get at something. I was, when I look back now and the letters that I wrote to companies for sponsorship and support and stuff like that, I was, I'm a bit sort of like, wow, I had a real nerve almost, but I was very determined. I knew what I wanted, and I think I was excited to see how good I could get. And yes, your athletics took up a lot of time, and I was then lucky to get good people that I worked for, an accountant panel Kerr Foster, that gave me time off, but I still worked for them twice a week up in London. Had to travel up from Brighton by that point. So, then there was still that determination of coming home from Brighton and 7 o'clock at night and doing your training on those days and stuff like that. And it was just, I was just so determined, and I would do what I needed to do to make it work. There was no thought about giving up or developing anything else. I just wanted to be a runner, and and by that point I was starting to get Great Britain internationals, and maybe Adidas sponsoring me and bits and pieces. So I was starting to get somewhere as well by the time I'd sort of got to 20 and stuff. So I could see that the progress was happening.
That's awesome. You were starting to see sort of tangible results. Adidas sponsorship, GB International. So I guess, so you finished school, you had to make all the choices of, you had mates going to university, but you had this passion for running, so you wanted to pursue that. But just quickly, throughout your growing up, throughout your childhood, I guess, what was the most memorable race for you actually? And actually triggered or actually gave you that real realization that there could be Olympic potential here?
I think right from a very young age, we had such thing called the English schools, which is like the national championship. So right from sort of 14, 15, I was sort of winning those sorts of events. So I knew that, I did have that sort of talent. I was doing a totally different event to what I ended up as, because I was sort of doing long jump and short hurdles and heptathlon and stuff. And so I had to keep sort of reinventing myself along the way to get better, and realising that I wasn't so good at certain events and that I need to focus more on this. So there was lots of sort of right-hand turns, if you know what I mean, and which worked out, which is great to look back at and see that it did work out. But I guess I won the Commonwealth Games. Well, I didn't go to the Olympics in 84 when I would have been 18 years old, and I remember just missing out and being really disappointed. And I think that was a real sort of like point where I really want this, and it wasn't about giving up, it was about finding a way to actually think, right, how can I better myself? What can I do? And it sort of made me one of the first changes of events, really. I went from heptathlon to doing the short hurdle. So I guess that was sort of the first time that I sort of thought, okay, I'm going to change a bit here, and I really want this, and spurred me on, even though I was sort of very disappointed I didn't get there. And then 2 years later, I won the Commonwealth Games as a 20-year-old, which was quite something, and shocked myself at being the fastest in the Commonwealth Games and winning that, and wasn't expecting it. But I think that sort of propelled me into the sort of like the next 6 years journey, really, of of going out there and delivering. But lots of ups and downs, and lots of things that I had to learn and on the way, 4-6 years later to being that Olympic champion, really.
That's really interesting. Thanks for sharing that, Sally. So just back to your childhood, obviously you had really good emotional support from your parents. Where did the determination come from? And did you have quite a structured environment growing up, or did your parents kind of give you freedom to try different things? Because obviously I can see from what you just explained, you kind of built on that momentum once you kind of got going. But that spark when you joined the club, can you talk about your environment? Was it structured, or was it unstructured?
Gosh, difficult to say, really. I suppose having my own kids now. I think, we were in the middle of nowhere on the farm, so you made your own entertainment and stuff like that. I think it's that, nature nurture sort of thing. I think you're born with that talent, but I think it's often the people that are around you and the opportunities and stuff that make you into that person. So I think it was structured in some ways, because it was always, the farm life was up at 5 o'clock in the morning, and you had your lunch at 1 o'clock, and you had your dinner all together, and probably the farm life finished about 9 o'clock at night in the summer. Do you know what I mean? So there was, it was a very structured sort of day around that. But I think the club gave you structure as well. When I was 14 years old, I was 3 times down at the athletics club, but it was more of a club, it was more of a social, and it was just, it's the first thing I say to anybody that's enjoying sport: go and join a club, because it's much more than just developing your physical side of it. It's the camaraderie, it's the learning, it's the communication, it's all those sorts of things that you learn, which is so important.
So another question I had for you around goal setting. So obviously been looking a little bit about your background and kind of the message you're putting out there in the world. Can you talk about your relationship with goal setting and how that may have evolved over time?
Yeah, I mean, it's still something that drives me now. I think it's about, it's something that my coach installed with me. You've got to get to that point where, you know what you've got to achieve. So he always allowed me to have what I used to call my dream goals, which would be the ultimate, the Olympics. And you probably never even realised you'd get there, but you're allowed to think like that, and people around you allow you to think like that. To knowing what you want to achieve in 4 years, a year's time, next week, today, and I think that was always something every training session, like what we're going to get out of today's training session. And it wasn't always the positive, it was always about learning things. So it was often about, he would educate me in finding the negatives almost. So I had something to improve on every time. It wasn't always about, oh, that was a brilliant hurdle. It was about, right, how can I improve that hurdle? My trail leg was slightly slower or whatever else, and he was making me think that. I was like, what do I need to do different, and working out and stuff like that, which I think was a skill that he put into me. So goal setting is, the day you retire, it was the first thing that I did, what now? I guess through my athletics career, I had that, the ultimate goal to go for, which is, in my second part of my life, I said lots of different things around family, personal fitness, work. They're all, they all deserve goals, and they've all, and it helps you to have meaning and purpose for your day, which I think is really important.
Okay, so you had your moonshot goal, obviously, winning gold at the Olympics, and then it sounds like you work with your coach to get down different steps, and obviously every step needed a lot of hard graft and dedication to achieve each step. But I guess having that big goal, I guess everyone needs a purpose, whether they're trained to be an Olympic world champion like yourself, or whether they're whether they want to start a business or whatever it is. So it's just it's helping our listeners understand the mindset that's required for them to, I guess, reach for the stars, but also have the reality that they need to break it down into manageable steps. Have you got anything else you want to comment?
Yeah, I think what people try and do is they have their ultimate, and but they haven't got clarity in how they're going to achieve it. And I think that was always something that was really important. It's great to think and to know where you want to be, and I think that's really important for some of the really sort of tough days that you have where you want to give up, and I don't know, you're injured or something hasn't happened, you've had a bad training session, and then that's why it's so important to know what it is you're trying to achieve. But also you've got to have clarity in how you're going to get there. So each week, each month, each day was, a structure that was in place. And sometimes you have to diverse off it because things happen, of injuries or illness, or you lose a deal that you wanted to get, or whatever it may be. But you had to learn how to from those situations, and become a better person from it, and give that direction. So, and then that's the not giving up. And that was the piece around, okay, this has happened for a reason, and I'll be a better person because of this. And I think it's about understanding that, and always learning. I had a great team of people around me. I think that's the thing that I learned over the years, is you can't do this on your own. And I think for many years I tried to learn everything about my sport, but you can't. So I built up, a great team of people, and I think it's about not being scared to ask for help, and having specialists in there, and we had nutritionists and psychologists and physiologists, and a whole team of people that got you to that end result and helped you on that journey. And even though I was the one that was putting them in place, they all had their own goals and their own situations that they had to they wanted to do and achieve in themselves, but it was working together to help me to be able to achieve what I was trying to achieve.
I think that's great. You built that support network around you that are able to help and support you towards your goal. Okay, so in 1991, so you got silver in the Tokyo World Championships. Now, I listened to an interview a few weeks back, and you shared that when you got to ninth hurdle, you were currently in the lead, and then you realised you were in the lead, panicked, your mind took over, the panic took over, and you actually just missed out on gold. So will you be able to share with the audience what this was like and what you learnt from this?
Yeah, massive amount. I mean, it was only a year from winning that Olympic gold medal, but I knew that the reason I didn't win, it wasn't that I didn't have the credentials. It wasn't that I hadn't trained hard enough or anything like that. It was just pure belief in myself and who I am as an individual. And, you know, and I think in so many things that I've come across now, especially when I work in a lot of organizations, it's about, you know, that's what holds us back is, you know, and it's not arrogance. It's just we're very quick to listen to that inner voice and just tell ourselves that we're not good enough and that we can't quite do this, or, you know, should I have done that and whatever else. And that's what I did on that day. And I was worrying about other people. You know, you can have massive respect for other people, but, you know, you can't change what they're doing. So, you know, why even worry about it? And that's exactly what I was doing on that race day in 91 before, you know, with that World Championships. And why I came second is because I was worrying about things that are outside of my control. So I knew that, you know, and you know, just by doing that, I brought in the sports psychologist. You know, and I hadn't worked with one, not many athletes worked in one by that point, but he was the person that, you know, taught me around visualization and self-belief and how to quieten that inner voice up and to how to mentally prepare yourself. And, you know, that whole 12 months, every single day was about looking at what I was trying to achieve. It was about visualizing it. It was about having the steps and that clarity that I've already talked about is what I've got to put in place to execute that right thing on that day. And that's why it's important to have those goals and those visions so you can, you know, mentally prepare yourself so you can visualize. And, you know, the difference is that when you go to achieve something, you've prepared yourself, you mentally have been there, you're not in shock, it feels comfortable. And also I sort of mentally prepare things that could go wrong. And I think that's a great thing for business. I think it's about sometimes thinking about things that could go wrong. So for me, it was about, oh, what happens if I got lane one in that Olympic final and I hit, you know, which is quite tough. Or if I hit a hurdle, what was I going to do? Or the bus turned up late. So I think it's sometimes about looking at every scenario, not always just the positive and that perfect race, but, you know, there's going to be, you know, things that are going to be thrown at you in whatever we're doing. And it's about, you know, trying to be ready and build that resilience to be able to get back in and to be able to adapt and to move forward and not throw all the toys out and just think, oh God, this isn't meant to be. And like, you know, nightmare. It's like, okay, this has happened, let's just do it. And I think that was one of the biggest skills that I had to learn. But it took many years to be able to do that. But it took a lot of mental strength and mental time to be able to do that sort of thing.
That's interesting. I didn't really realise the kind of the mental strength that was required, kind of the importance of mindset, and how much it kind of influences and how much influence, I guess, the difference between that silver and that gold, but also the difference between just even giving it a go.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's a lot of people out there with a lot of talent, and it's what makes you different to everybody else. And often that is the mindset is the difference. And I would often say, you know, as much as in some of those big races, as much as 70% is in the mind. And those girls, you know, they hated me by the end of it because, you know, they would beat me week in, week out, but it got to major championships and I was the one that prepared for that moment, you know, and, you know, they're like, how has she done that? And it was just that mental preparation that allowed us to do it. So, yeah, it's a powerful tool, I always say.
In fact, on the mindset subject, so how much of it do you think is mindset as a percentage versus physical ability? Obviously, you need to be physically strong and capable, but is there a ratio that you would put to it? Just finger in the air, 70-30?
Well, yeah, I think that's 70% because I think, you know, there was people in that race that were faster than me, stronger than me. You know, I think I was technically better than them, but they were probably better, you know, 6 foot tall and an amazing athlete, physically, but what I had was that mental preparation, and I knew exactly what I had to execute on that day. So yeah, 70% of it, I would say, is the mind. And and I've seen it all the time with so many things. You can physically be amazing, and you can have the best talent out there, but if you haven't got that belief and you haven't prepared yourself mentally, then you won't achieve. And it's exactly the same in business. And it is that difference between arrogance, because you get lots of people within business that's a very good talker, and they can talk their way into it, but they haven't put the bits in place, so you've still got to have all those elements. And I think it's just, it's about giving yourself time to mentally prepare yourself beforehand, rather than just trying to, talk yourself out of the situation or whatever it may be, or talk yourself into it at the last minute. It's giving yourself time and the respect that you need as a person, and that what you can create.
Yeah, and in fact, you mentioned visualization earlier on, and I mean, psychology is a subject that I'm particularly interested in. So I don't know whether you have a comment to this theory that you control the thoughts you think, you control the what you visualize, and you control the actions that you take. So you've basically covered those three things off, and it's this conditioned mindset that you can do it. And the other thing that interested me, what you said, was you were looking at scenarios that if things did go wrong, and rather than focus on the problem, if you hit a hurdle or whatever, we'll come up with face a challenge, it's what you do in that situation. So you'd already mentally trained yourself to expect that those different scenarios, and of course you can't plan everything, but can you talk more about that, or any comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a process that I had to learn, and it's just finding a solution for lots of different things, and sometimes I'm sure it can be very annoying for people, because I always it's like, right, I've got to get this sorted, rather than sitting back and doing that. But it was something that I and as you say, in the first part of it was about that inner voice and controlling it, and it is the voice everybody has of I feel a bit tired today, and oh god, this isn't a very good bit of work, and you either choose to listen to that, or you choose to go, okay, do you know what, I miss and of this, and that's what I had to learn, was just to keep force feeding those positive thoughts. But it is about finding time to do that. It's not just going to happen. And I would take 5 minutes each day, and it might be that I was going for a walk or driving a car, cleaning my teeth, but I would take myself off to what I was trying to achieve and to that inner voice, and just spend time just giving yourself that confidence. And I think it's the thing that we all lack. And it's amazing, as I say, to be able to say, do you know what, you've worked hard, you deserve this, you're a great guy, let's see where you can go, and I've worked hard for it, and and it's about teaching yourself to be able to do that.
I'd like to take this moment to introduce to you our sponsor, Flexi, the must-have app to track and manage your subscriptions in one place. So most of us have multiple subscriptions nowadays for things like streaming services, gym memberships and food deliveries. These are great and take the hassle out of buying everyday products that we consume regularly, but it can be hard to keep track of them. That's where Flexi comes in handy, using super secure technology to connect your accounts to see all your subscriptions in a single dashboard, putting you in control of your spending. And what's more, Flexi's subscription marketplace allows you to discover new products you may love, all easy to pause, resume or cancel in a swipe or two. So give Flexi a try. It's free to download from the App Store, or check out their website at www.flexyapp.uk. That's FLEXY app.uk. Back to the podcast. So the year after you came back, there was nothing stopping you, and you went and took gold in Barcelona. I guess just for our audience, would you be able to just detail what that was like, from starting that race to finish to taking that gold medal?
Yeah, the difference was from that year before is I don't remember anything of that Olympic race, because I'd mentally prepared myself, because I'd done all that work, which took hours and hours and hours. I just got on the line and I went into this thing which is called the zone, and I think I only ever did it twice in my whole career. But it's where you just go into, autopilot almost. The gun went and I don't remember any part of that race until I crossed the line and I ran the ultimate race. It was the perfect race almost that I'd practiced every single day, probably some days, 20 times a day. But I executed it exactly, the stride pattern and what leg and everything. Every time I had to hit a hurdle that I'd worked out. And to the point where you crossed the line, and I think the biggest thing for me was I didn't know whether it was the real thing or whether it was just another rehearsal in my mind. And it took months and months for it to sink in, because you just go, I don't know, it was just like, why me? Why has, farmer's daughter from Essex become an Olympic champion? And then you're like, wow, this is crazy. And I think finally I did think about, and I broke it down, but I found it really hard. And probably, your question is one of the hardest questions that I've ever had in my life. I get asked it all the time because it's so hard to describe, because it was just complete shock and disbelief that I'd actually sort of achieved that. And it was quite interesting because it's not until you retire that you have time to look back and see what you did and to understand it. At the time, you then are already going on to the next thing. And I think that's another trait of somebody that's quite successful. It's, it's like, okay, love this feeling. It's brilliant, but I want more. And you set yourself your new goals, your new targets and world records, all these sorts of things, and you go again, and you don't have time to reflect, to celebrate, to to even think about it. And I think it was just like, right, off to the next one, next thing. And I think it wasn't until as I said, I retired. As you get older, and your kids start asking you questions, that you go, wow, I was quite good once. But yeah, it's a weird thing.
So thanks for sharing that, Sally. There's actually a book that it makes me think of. It's a book called Breaking the Rules by, I think it's Kevin Wright. I know the last name is Wright, Wright, and he talks about effortless high performance. So your mental conditioning, your physical training, were you able to replicate getting into the zone? You said you worked hard on that. Is it something that you could switch on, or is it something that the conditions just had to be perfect? And obviously, these big events, maybe that's what it took.
Yeah, I think that's why it only ever happened twice. It's because it takes pressure, expectation, mental preparation. It's not something that you can just drop in and out each week. It doesn't happen like that. I found it's very draining, but that's maybe just me. I was right, this is the moment, this is the focus, this is what I'm building up to, and that's what I could do. Whereas, for lots of other people, maybe they are capable of doing that each week, but I just found it very draining. And it was, I don't know, I suppose it was just what I was trying to achieve. It was just, what was important in my life. It wasn't about times, it wasn't about money, it was just about being the best version that I could be. And I think I knew I couldn't reach that all the time, and it just had to be on that day. So I think that's probably a personal thing, but also to get yourself there. I mean, I don't know how many people have actually been there, and I don't, I'm never get there now. It took sport, and I know sport is something that people talk about within sport, to allow yourself to get there. But I think a lot of it is the nerves and the pressure that you're under at the same time.
Fantastic. So can you talk a little about your transition, from obviously from an athlete to a businesswoman? Can you talk about that transition and how how that's changed, how your life's changed, and I guess also what your vision is for the next decade? What message are you looking to put out in the world, just for our listeners out there that might be going through a transition? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was hard the day you retire, because it's it's one whole part of your life, and I just think and I was 29 years old, no, 28, something like that. So it's a bit of a weird thing because that had been my life for years. And I know a lot of sports people really struggle. But the first thing I did was to actually sit down and set those goals. And I think as soon as I knew what it was, and, I hadn't been able to go skiing, I hadn't been able to, drive go-karts, all those sorts of things. So I think it was, as soon as I knew what it was, what it looked like, and there were certain things work-wise that was being offered, I was excited by it. And I knew it was the right thing, that I'd given up on the track, and, I had this whole new start. And I think that gave me a real sort of like focus and really helped me to think, right, this is exciting, this is new, and what can I learn, and where can I go with it all? But it was quite different having, probably 4 or 5 different goals rather than just one ultimate, but it was still as important. And I think, it took me quite a while. I think it's, you're thrown into situations that you've never been before. As an athlete, you're quite a selfish person because it's about what you eat, it's about your training, it's about all those sorts of things. I had to learn that there's other people in the world almost, and I think having kids straight away really helped that. It wasn't all about you. And also I think I learned that, around business, I hadn't been exposed really to business world, and I think I tried to be somebody else that I wasn't. And I think it was about learning quite a few years to be true to yourself and what your own beliefs are, and not trying to fit into a box of somebody else. And I think that took me a while. I think it took me a while to understand people. There's a lot of people that want to use you because of who you are and to rip you off. And so I had to learn how to judge people. And I think a lot about going with your own gut feeling and being able to try, read people, which I hadn't had to do with, being an athlete and a sports person. And I think that took a while. So I think it's just about learning there's new journeys and there's new things and new challenges and new ups and downs. And, it was still the same thing and what I've learned. And, what I've been retired now, probably, 25 years, something like that. And I would say, I'm still learning. Still haven't got it sussed, but I'm still very motivated, and I've still, I keep saying I have to keep reinventing myself over the years, which is brilliant that I get that opportunity, and still how important to carry on learning is, and I think that helps with reinventing yourself. So, now at the moment we're doing a lot around corporate health and well-being, which has sort of been a progress from doing a lot of talks on high performance, but now it's much more around health, well-being, resilience, and putting good, strong programs into organisations to help their employees, and to, especially in the last few months, it's been really important. So yeah, I'm very excited by that because it's something that it's me, it's true to me. I won't do something that I don't enjoy now, I don't believe in, which I think has allowed me to do that. But, still ups and down days, still good days, bad days, pressure. But I think the thing I've learned is to appreciate much more the now, to understand, live in the moment. I think sport you're always on the next roller coaster. And I think, I think where I've come from in the whole full circle is about living much more in the now and appreciating it. Yeah, and focus and to really push yourself, but sometimes to appreciate the things that are really around you and true to you. And I think especially in this last sort of 3-4 months,
I think that's a powerful message about kind of living in the now, and appreciating what you currently have around you. But I guess also it's great to see that you're continually setting goals for yourself, you're continuing developing and reinventing yourself. So I guess I would be interested to understand, at what point did you kind of feel successful? At what point did you say, I'm successful? Or have you said that yet? Have you felt that yet?
I think it's a really interesting thing, and I don't think you ever do. It's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I was sort of saying I didn't reflect on my athletics career till afterwards. And probably now, what is success? It's not about the car or the house or any of those sorts of things. I think the thing that I've learned now, it's about, as I said, it's about almost slowing down. And I think it's about the people that are around you and the friendship and relationships and things that make you happy. So, I'm not saying that we shouldn't have those drives, and it's really nice, but I like to feel like I've earned my holidays, and that's by working hard. But I'd like to then share my holidays or my time with my family and my friends, and feel like, that time that I've worked hard this is the way that I reward it. And it's not just about me, it's about how I can share that with others. And I think that's the thing that, is really important. And I think it's taken, quite a few years to understand.
So you're now talking about kind of finding what makes you happy. You mentioned about slowing down. So I guess a lot of what you do now, following your Olympic career, is about that goal, which is happiness. It's what I've seen in your blogs. You talk about yoga, you talk about being healthy, and talk about being kind to yourself, which obviously links to mindfulness. So I guess, would you be able to share with our audience some mindfulness tips and techniques that you have learned?
I can't, highlight how important exercise is, and I exercise now for a completely different reason. It's not about, what you look like. It's about my mental health. It allows me to have my me time. That's probably what I call my mindfulness. It allows me to listen to the birds. It allows me to, walk with the dog, all those sorts of things. And that's about, that's what exercise does for me now. I think that's what's really important. So I would say, that's a really important. I think sleep, I can't highlight how important it is to, I know, and it's hard sometimes. But so much of, mental health and tiredness and not achieving and, not feeling happy with things is because we haven't had a good night's sleep. We make bad decisions and that sort of thing. So I think it's important to get off those machines and to, and to switch off. And that's, what does that look like to people? That goes back to your me time. Is that, just reading a book, reading a magazine, having a cup of coffee? I think so often we feel guilty about doing those sorts of things. And I'm one for that, not allowing yourself to do those things. And I think the thing that I've learned, and I'd say to people, is, you deserve it. And I'm not saying just sit there and read a book all day. It's about, finding your 5-10 minutes, having your lunch break. It's about getting outside and doing some exercise, going for a walk. It's just about appreciating all those and how important those are to help you guys in achieving what you want to achieve, and to be able to deal with it, because you don't get burnout, and you don't get mental health issues or whatever else. It's about realizing how important some of those things are.
Yeah, and you touched on the mental health issues. I mean, have you had any maybe experiences in the past that have not been so good in terms of your mental health state, and maybe how have you overcome them?
Yeah, and I think we all do to a certain degree. And I know, I grew up with my mum having a lot of mental health problems, and I see it a lot with the corporate wellbeing work we do at the moment. Yeah, it's a big area, and it's going to be bigger in what we've been through in the last 3 to 4 months. And we have bad days, but I always say, if I haven't exercised, I know if I've eaten rubbish, drunk too much, haven't exercised, then I'm not a particularly nice person to be around. It's as simple as that. So I now know what I need to put in place. When things are tough, I will go for a walk. I'll force myself. It's the last thing I want to do, but I'll force myself to do it. So yeah, we do have bad and good days. And I think that's the other thing of, I've got a great group of friends and we talk complete rubbish. And I think, but it does help. And I think, it is about having people we can chat to as well. And I think sometimes when you're on your own in your office and, maybe you are an entrepreneur and you're doing this on the own, sometimes you don't have people to chat to. And I think it's really important. It doesn't have to be, within people that you associated with. It could be anybody. But I think that's, realising how important that is as well.
Yeah, and it's kind of who you surround yourself with. You say you've got your friends that you surround yourself with. That's so important. That's a message that we've seen consistently from other guests we've had on. It's all about that, who you surround yourself with, because it is so important. It's the top 5, I think people say.
Yeah, and also I think, when I was, running and training, I had to work, not everybody was that positive around me. So I had to learn when to, what to say, when to move away, who I was going to share a room with. Some people can be very draining, and it's how important, I would surround myself with really great positive people, because it made the difference, massively, and even now.
Yeah, your comment about being mindful and being in the here and now, in the present moment, I think is something that, well, personally, I've struggled with it. I'm either thinking too far ahead or I'm thinking behind, or I've got a foot in the past and a foot in the future. But it's like here and now. And certainly as a parent, I have 3 daughters, to actually be present with them, conscious with them. It's a really interesting topic. And the other thing that you said that is something else that keeps popping up is being able to separate between the things that you can control and the things that you can't control. And sometimes those lines get blurred. I don't know whether you have anything to say about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think on the first one, I think, sometimes little small changes can make such a big difference. Some people think, God, I'm never going to be able to do this, but or whatever else. But, I think that's how we worked as athletes, and that's something that I work now. Even if you just tweak a little bit, and as a runner, you take your own pillow with you. It's simple things like that can make such a big difference. And and I think that's where little things like just sitting down and, I don't know, chatting to your kids and having a meal is something that should be prioritized. And it might only be 10 minutes or whatever else, but it's something that is so it's just little things. It doesn't have to be massive. We don't have to change everything, and I think that's really important. And then now I've forgotten the second question. What was the second question? Sorry.
The second question was separating between what you can control and what you can't control, because you commented on it earlier, how the lines are blurred sometimes. But I think, because people can worry, 95% of what people worry about generally don't happen, but it's just knowing what you can control and what you can't.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a skill in itself, and that's something that I took ages to do. But that whole visualization and that whole, just process of it. And I think it's just, I think I learned it the first time was when I didn't win a race at European Championships, and and I'd had all these lovely plain sailing, and then it was like, wham, you're not the athlete that you thought. But it was a case of, well, you can dwell on this for 6 months. Or, the thing I had to learn, and what I was learning is like, okay, so this has happened, and come on, let's work out why. So everything that goes wrong, I just try and find that positive. And I think it doesn't matter how big, how small, you just think, I've got to find the learning, something to learn, and making sure it doesn't happen again. And it just helps me to move. And the more you do that, the more that you just naturally, instantly do it. And I know now that I've retired, and in this world, there's, that is the whole outlook. Is I'm always trying to sort everybody's problems out, which sometimes is good. Sometimes you just need to let things be and then look at it in a few days' time. But I am a solutions person, and that's what my sport has taught me. And there's sometimes some good and bad from that.
One final question I'd like to touch on quickly. So if we could arrange for you to have a coffee with anybody, who would you choose and why?
Gosh, do they have to be alive?
Maybe have one of each.
Oh, wow. Should have warned me about this.
Make it really good.
Yeah, I think Nelson Mandela would have been somebody that I would love to have had a coffee with and spent time with. I trained a lot in South Africa, so I was there for many years when he was such an important figure. And I think he, reading his book and it just taught so much, and it made so much sense. So probably him. And now, the person now would be David Attenborough, which probably everybody it probably would say, and just where I am in my life, and just how important those sorts of things, our world and animals and what they teach us, and again that living in the now. And it's not always about pushing and drive and all these sorts of things. Sometimes it is about appreciating the things that we have around.
Yeah, David Attenborough is a great answer. He's just amazing guy. I mean, I remember there was a festival I saw on the news, and it was, I don't know if it was Glastonbury or something. It went completely plastic free, and he came up on stage, and you've never seen a guy, just his voice, just completely, the whole place just went silent as they listened. Every generation, everybody just stopped and listened. He's made such a difference in the world,
isn't it? And he would know so much, isn't it? And it's from what we need to learn still.
Awesome stuff. And I guess one final thing from me. So actually, Peter, have you got a question for Sally before we quickly wrap up?
Yes, I do. It was kind of around the kind of topic of trainers and mentors. And I guess I hadn't ever thought of a trainer kind of being that and being your like support network for probably quite a long time as you're training. But how important is it that you find those people in your life, whether that is within sports or within business and kind of your day-to-day life? So yeah, how important is it that you found those people, and is there kind of anyone that you really have met during your journey?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for me, there are a lot of those are role models, and I had role models throughout my whole life and still do now. Obviously, my role models when I was younger were athletes and sports people like Ed Moses and people like that. Now, I think it's, and it is that crossover. Bruce, my coach, was an amazing mentor, and my husband that I met when I was young, he was a great backbone of what I did, and so I had those great people around me, which was really important. But even still now, I still have, even at 50 odd years old, I'm still looking and having role models and people I look up to, and often I come across very successful women within business, and who do seem to have balanced and a very strong views, and achieving a lot, and have great families, and I think, wow, amazing. And I think it's really important for all of us to have people in our lives, but we're always looking at, who do we want to be inspired by? And I think there's nothing wrong with that. So yeah, when you've got nobody, then that you look up to, I think that's probably tells your type of character, isn't it? So I think, at any point, there's always somebody that you aspire to who, really you think, wow, it's amazing what they do.
Yeah, so I have a final question for you. So if you were to leave one piece of advice for our listeners, what would that advice be?
I would just say is believe in yourself. Look at that whole mental side and the strength of the mind, and read up about it, learn some techniques, and plug into it. Don't ignore it. 9 times out of 10, it's always the last thing that we address. We look at all the work, we look at all this and that, but it's often the thing that holds us back. So yeah, just go out, believe in yourselves, and tap into it.
Awesome. And if people want to find you on social media, where can they go?
Yeah, just look up Sally Gunnell on Twitter, on Instagram, and and we've got a website as well. So yeah, just have a little look. Brilliant. Thank you very much, guys.
Well, Sally, thank you so much for coming on. It's been awesome to have you. Thank you very much for joining us for the very first episode of Rocket Pod. Join us next week as we chat to world record holder and adventurer Neil Lawton, who was the first man to fly from London to Timbuktu in a flying car. You don't want to miss it. Check us out on social media at We Are Rocket Pod, and of course subscribe. And one big final thank you to our awesome sponsor Flexi, who is the mecca for all your subscriptions. Something that we love about Flexi is they feature local and independent businesses, making you feel even better about shopping with Flexi. So what are you waiting for? Download for free today from the App Store and check out that website at flexiapp.uk. That's spelled FLEXY app.uk, and start managing your subscriptions today. We look forward to joining you next week. Have a great day.